combatants, but the innocent people. And I think about the legacies lost. I think if all the people that were killed in the war had survived, had families, or they had families, how many world leaders and geniuses and workers that would be alive today.
In a normal year, we would see a large gathering of people here coming out. As a matter of fact, what we've seen over the years is the numbers are actually growing instead of going the other way. So this whole idea of having a Remembrance Day ceremony is so important to have people give the opportunity to let them know that the veterans and all these sacrifices is not forgotten.
So in front of me here is the 1949 Ladies Auxiliary Memorial Wall Clock in honor of their 9 sons who paid the supreme sacrifice in World War II. And although it's difficult for people to see from a distance, when you get up close, on the brass portion down below is the name of the 9 sons. All people who were born and raised in Barrie or came here at an early age and lived in the city. They went to public schools, they went to the Barrie Collegiate at the time, and then joined either the Army or the Air Force. So there are 9 names inscribed in the brass part just below the clock face. Eldred Haddon, who was with the RAF 156 Squadron, who was killed at the age of 20. He had taken part in several raids over Germany. We also have a gentleman named Len Gosney. Len was a pilot officer, served with the 207 RAF Squadron, and he was killed on his first mission, January 2, 1944, in a bombing raid over the Berlin area. He's buried in a cemetery in Berlin, age 21. Royal Smith, Joseph Smith, he was a pilot officer, served with the 106th RAF Squadron, and he was killed on May 10, 1944 in a bombing raid over France, just prior to the June 6, 1944 D-Day invasion. Flight Sergeant Dalton Morgan Corbett was killed in action on June 25, 1944. He was flying in a bomber, Halifax, that had taken off from Algeria that was on a secret special operations mission that was taking place down in the southern part of France. The aircraft crashed about 1 a.m. in the morning, and all the crew were killed. The next soldier is Sergeant George Andrew Jones. George was killed in action on the 4th of July, 1944, at the age of 21. He was training to be an air gunner in a Wellington plane in England when the engines failed and there were no survivors, a crew of 7, all Canadian men killed in that. Private George Frederick Charlton Lindsay, who went by the name Charlton, was killed in action on August 4, 1944, while serving with the South Saskatchewan Regiment, an infantry regiment in France, just about 2 months after the June 6 D-Day invasion. Sergeant Eric Walter Buchanan is one individual that we don't have a photograph for out of the 9 men here. We're continuing to hope that we will find one. He was killed at the Gothic line, area where Canadians were fighting in Italy on September 1st, 1944, while serving with the 4th Princess Louise Dragoon Guards. He was born in Barrie in 1912. Lance Corporal Norman Wines, who was killed in action on October 29, 1944 in Holland when he was involved on a raid. He was serving with the Royal Highland Black Watch Regiment. He's buried in Bergen-op-Zoom, the Canadian War Cemetery in the Netherlands. And the last soldier that we have here is Lieutenant Norman Octavius Hooper, who was killed on February 28, 1945, in a tank battle that was taking place on the borders of Holland and Germany. He was born in Allendale in 1914. He had enlisted with the Grand Simcoe Foresters in 1940, and then he went on, because he had worked for the Barrie Examiner, he was taken on as part of the public relations out of the East Coast, and eventually did come back into service, and as I have indicated, he was killed in 1945.
Well, it all started when I was called up into the Air Force, and after your basic training, I went and did my medical training, and I got past my exams. And then when you were past your exams, you went on to different airfields where they had station sick quarters. And at the station sick quarters, you had a doctor in charge and then a small staff of maybe 10 or 11 medics. And we looked after the well-being of the camp or the airfield.
I was 7 years old when the war ended. I remember the bombing and the rationing, and the biggest thing I remember is the men coming home when I was 8 or 9 years old after the war, especially the ones that had been prisoners. They were in pretty rough shape.
Other times we were up taking the doctor around in his rounds in an ambulance, driving the ambulance. And we had in the station sick quarters, we were taught to sterilize the equipment and needles. There was no package of needles in these days. You had to sharpen them and you had to sterilize them and keep them up, keep them clean.
Oh, well, I certainly learned discipline, of course. Comradeship, I think, was the biggest thing. I made lots of friends. I got stationed in Gosport near Portsmouth, which is a big naval base, of course.
Yes. Hmm?
And we used to take the ferry across. It wasn't very far. I don't know, 500 yards, something like that. Because there was more fun at Portsmouth than there was at Gosport. But the ferry quit at 10 o'clock.
Uh-oh.
So if you missed the last ferry, there was,
Well, you were
a rowboat.
Oh.
So he's rowing us across, and there's a destroyer coming down.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Hey, row, row. Oh, I thought I was going to die that night.
No life jackets.
No. They were pretty well liquored up, too.
Initially, I thought I was going on a holiday. Believe it or not. Here I am, a young 18-year-old saying, they're going to send me to Egypt. They're sending me on a holiday. I get to see the pyramids, I go to the desert, this is cool. But what happened was my whole mindset was totally changed on the day I landed in Cairo. When I got to Cairo on the plane, they told us to stay in our seats. And there was a good reason for that. I looked out the window, and in a conveyor belt, there was a coffin being put into the aircraft, and there was a Canadian soldier who had lost his life on the same mission I was going on. Totally changed my whole mindset about why I was there. So this is not a holiday, this is for real.
Canadian peacekeepers have served on every continent except Antarctica, Africa, Asia, South America, North America, even Hurricane Katrina. We sent I believe 2 destroyers down there to help them after the hurricane hit them.
I signed up to serve because my grandfather had fought in World War I, my father had fought in World War II, and I felt it was the right thing to do was to serve Canada, to follow in their footsteps and the wonderful example that they had set, fighting for what they believed in and to free the occupation and aggression that was ongoing in Europe during both of those wars.
The blue beret I wore overseas in the Gaza Strip and in the Congo as a member of the United Nations peacekeeping force. And we served with numerous other countries, got along well. I can't recall ever an incident of the Canadians not getting along with other contingents. We were all there for the same reason, and we all enjoyed each other's company, and it was really a learning experience to socialize with them and understand their ways of life, and also where we were, to understand the conflict that goes on in the Middle East and the causes of war and you know, all over the world.
There is a price for freedom, and unfortunately sometimes we take that for granted. The freedom we have today, we forget about how we got there, why we got there. And so unfortunately that's the way it is around the world right now, and that's why Canada is always going on peacekeeping missions around the world, because we're being asked to assist those countries to help them get the freedom that they deserve.
The cause of war is so broad. There's so many different causes, and I suppose we'll always have conflict.
And then you got your First World War, Second World War, and what they call the Forgotten War, our Korean vets. We lost 516 Canadians there. Then you have all your peacekeeping missions, Afghanistan. So there's so much more to the poppy than just the First World War.
We have a commitment that says we will remember. And the Remembrance Day is that symbolic day that once again verifies to the world that we really have lived up to that commitment.
Without the regular ceremony, it's still important that people take time on the 11th hour of the 11th day to honor our veterans who have served and are serving.
Chief Warden, General salute, salute. Please be seated.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 147, I would like to welcome Federal Member of Parliament John Brassard and Doug Shipley, Member of Provincial Parliament Doug Downey, Mayor Jeff Lehman from the City of Barrie, Mayor Don Allen of Springwater Township, and Councillor Donna Orsetti from Innisfil. Honorary Colonel of Degree and Simcoe Forester Kevin Carroll, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison, Silver Cross Mother Mrs. Mackay and her husband Fred, Mrs. Montero, and all in attendance for joining us today in the remembrance of those who served our country so many years ago to give us the freedom we have today. We're here to remember as well those who live, were, and are forever changed by the experience of war. My name is Marcel Vigneault, President of the Royal Canadian Legion, Barrie, and together with Steve Glover, Public Relations Officer, we will be your master of ceremony for today's event.
Parade! Parade, thunder, east. Please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. At this time, I call upon Lieutenant Colonel Morrison to come forward for her address.
Good morning, everybody. Distinguished guests, Silver Cross Mother, Mrs. Elizabeth Mackay, and her husband Fred, Mrs. Montero, Honorable John Broussard, Honorable Doug Shipley, Honorable Doug Downey, His Worship Jeff Lehman, His Worship Don Allen, Councillor Donna Orsetti, Honorary Colonel Kevin Carroll, Brigadier General Retired John Hayter, ladies and gentlemen. Remembrance Day is marked on this day every year, a day when Canadians pause in a moment of silence to honor and remember the men and women who have served in the Canadian Armed Forces, both past and present, during times of war, conflict, and peace. We gather to pay tribute to the 2.3 million Canadians who have served throughout our nation's history and the 118,000 anniversary of the end of the Second World War. This bitter conflict raged for 6 years and saw over 1 million brave Canadians serve in uniform around the globe. We reflect on the profound sacrifices that were made by each and every one. Unfortunately, as you're aware, Second World War veteran Mr. Bill Snow is not joining us today. He served with the 1st Canadian Radar Battery of the Royal Canadian Artillery as a forward observer spotting targets. The war took him from France to Belgium, the Netherlands, and finally into Germany. Obviously, though he's not with us today, we are very grateful for his accomplishments and are thankful beyond words for the incredible gift of freedom that we enjoy today. This year also marks the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands. There are many proud chapters in Canada's military history, but one of the best known is the liberation of the Netherlands. The Dutch people have never forgotten our braves. We're grateful for the freedom and peace that we enjoy. Thank you for being here with us today, and I thank you for your leadership and your personal example in paying tribute and honoring our soldiers, our sailors, and our aviators. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison. I call upon Bruce Cochran, President of Barrie Army Navy Air Force Club, to read Lieutenant Colonel John McRae's.
I scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, but now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Field.
Perhaps not as deadly as the influenza of 1917-18, but certainly affecting millions, if not billions, of human souls worldwide. Now, Christians do not believe that war and disease are of those who serve in our armed forces today, for those who served in the Great War, World War II, Korea, and peacekeeping missions in the past and present. And especially today, we give thanks and remember those who gave the supreme sacrifice in the midst of conflict and darkness. To peace which came out of struggle and epidemic in 1917-18 can be our experience today if we lay down our ideological arms and pursue peace. It is to that end that we strive, following the example of those who have gone before us, and dedicate ourselves anew to making peace their lasting legacy. And so we pray. O God, we remember before you those who laid down their lives for freedom and truth. We commend their souls into your gracious keeping and pray that we may be worthy of their sacrifice. Help us to be faithful and true to those ideals for which they fought and died. May we continue to perpetuate the memory of our departed comrades by service to our community, country, and comrades. And remembering our solemn obligation, may we ever pray, Lord God of hosts, be with us yet, lest
easy. Be seated.
They shall not grow old, as we are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. We will proceed now with the laying of the Silver Cross Mother's wreath. Mr. and Mrs. Mackay. They'll be escorted by Parade Marshal Fern Taifer.
I will call upon Padre to come back for the benediction, please.
Please rise. Parade, attention.
Unto God's gracious mercy and protection we commit you. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord cause his face to shine upon us and be gracious to us. The Lord lift up his countenance upon us and give us always his shalom.
Thank you, Padre Sutherland. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the singing of God Save the Queen. This concludes the ceremony. All spectators are invited to stay for lunch, which will be served shortly.
Please remain standing for the general salute.
I did that.
To Lieutenant Colonel Morrison, Deputy Commander, 16 Wing, Chippy Borden. General salute. Salute. Please remain standing while we march off the flags. Color charges. Hey! Retrieve flags. Hey! Color party. Attend. Hey! Line to center. Right. March.
Mark time. Good. Halt. Pick up flag. Attention. Outwards turn. By the center, quick march. Parade dismissed. Now I believe it is time to ceremonize. This concludes the ceremony. All spectators are invited to stay for lunch, which will be served shortly, remembering our social distancing guideline.
If you were to ask the people of Barrie, where's the nearest military unit? They would probably say Base Borden. But in actual fact, this red brick building behind me houses an infantry regiment